Welcome to the Major League Fishing No Limits Pop-Up Podcast. Pop-Up number 1 is with Tennessee pro David Walker. David's face has appeared on a Wheaties box. He's done pretty well for himself, but you never would have guessed that based on a very humble, pretty comical start to his tournament bass fishing career. Ladies and gentlemen, here he is, David Walker. See, he's already laughing. He's going to. Tell us about your first bass tournament.
It's a hot mess now. So I grew up in Michigan, and in Michigan we fished and hunted. That's what I did. You know, this was before the internet was available, and kept everybody locked indoors there. So you went outside and did stuff, and I was always a fisherman and hunter, and we fished for whatever. And I fished as a kid, whatever, little creeks, ponds, whatever, it didn't matter. And so as I got older, then I ended up, or after high school, I had a job at a factory, same little factory my dad worked at, and just manual labor stuff. It was a tool and die shop. And so we did, I was in the plastic shop. There's a wood shop, a metal shop, and a plastic shop. I was in the plastic shop. So we did injection molding. And just a lot of hours. We worked, a typical work week was 6 10s and an 8. That's what we worked about 6 days a week.
Okay.
And if we had something pressing, we would work 7 days. But Sundays were usually about 6-hour days. They were short days. But I hardly ever went because I always would just skip out and go. I wanted to go hunting or fishing.
Yeah.
So we worked a lot. We was in the factory a lot. So you want something to look forward to.
Mm-hmm.
And fishing season, like I knew what was going to open up, and that's what you'd go. When this season opened, that's what you fished for in that
Right.
season.
Got
So
it.
you didn't care. And so one of the other guys that worked there, he knew I had a little boat. I had a 14-foot aluminum, and he had this little paper flyer, and it was a bass tournament. And he said it's going to be on opening weekend of bass season, so we're going to go fish. Because up there they have seasons, like
Yeah,
you
sure.
can't fish for bass year round. And so it was like Memorial Weekend, somewhere right around in that.
What part of the state is this?
This is in southern, so right outside Detroit.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Matter of fact, the factory we worked at was on 13 Mile.
Got it.
So I was, but we lived a little further north of there, 30-minute drive north. So, and this tournament was going to be held about another 30 minutes north of where we lived at.
Mm-hmm.
And so he's like, let's go fish this deal. And so this was early in the year, and so we was just talking about and laughing about, we're going to go fish this tournament. It should be fun. We had no idea what we was getting into. Well, it's just we're going to catch some fish and win some money,
Yeah.
How hard could it be?
Easy.
Right.
Yeah.
Easy.
And oh my God! So we go to the tournament. And we get there, and they give us these little paper plates. You sign in, pay your $35, whatever it was. We ponied up the money, put it in there. They had a little side pot for big fish. Of course, we're going to get in on all that.
Sure.
You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Because we're here to win it, so there's all these boats there and we get a little paper plate, got our number on it. I have no idea what it was. I'm going to just guessing. I'm going to say it was probably a 75 boat tournament, field size, somewhere in that neighborhood. And I'm in my 14-foot aluminum with the homemade live well that I basically, so little bench seats, and cut it out. And in the other shop in where I worked at, we'd made a fiberglass box and we set it right down in there. I had a little pump, a little aerator.
Right,
So this
right.
is a live well, homemade.
Yeah.
And I had my tackle box, which was one box, and you open it up, 2 trays.
Two trays. Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
And it had a worm in there and a top water in there and and a couple spoons, because spoons always work good.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that was, I was ready for everything with that. You know what I mean? That, and I had maybe 2 or 3 rods. I know one of them was a fly rod, because I liked the idea of doing fly fishing, and then until I got a fly rod, then I didn't like the idea of fly fishing anymore. But I had the rod, so I put a spinning reel on the fly rod.
Oh, right. Nice.
So it worked great.
Sure.
Yeah. And anyway, so this is just to give you an idea of the equipment we got here. I
Yeah.
got a 15 horse. This is a pull start,
Yeah.
and when they kick back, it jerk your arm right out of
Nice.
socket.
Yeah.
But so we got set up, and we're sitting out there. I got that paper plate, and there's all these boats there, and they are like sparkling, and they're like these guys in them, and there's older guys, and they're all. And I'm like, look at these damn boats. The motors are huge. Like,
Yeah.
the hell you
Yeah,
need?
yeah.
Oh, that's the craziest idea I've ever seen. Like, that little boat has got a motor the size of the guy in it.
Yeah.
And so they do the little boat numbers, and they just start calling out the numbers, and you take off. And I mean, these guys walk. So it's all Rangers, Champions, what have you, just glass boats, and these guys are just roaring, and we're out there. You can just imagine what it's like. And
are you the only boat of this kind in this?
yeah,
You're pretty much
pretty
the only.
much.
So you stood out.
Yeah.
You stood out.
We
Yeah.
stood out
Noticeable.
for sure. Didn't know it at the time,
Nice,
but yeah,
nice.
yeah, we were
Yeah.
kind of. So I mean, we're just running up to there. It takes me for everybody's already up there and fishing and what have you. By the time we even get across the lake we weren't very familiar with.
Yeah.
And one of the few reservoirs that are in Michigan there, and it's more of it's a better carp hole than it is.
Okay. All right.
And so we're fishing for a while, and I throw my little topwater around, and we're not catching nothing. And then the storms come, and it starts pouring. I mean, it is raining sideways, and I've got my rain suit is also in my tackle box because it's one of them yellow ponchos, the little snaps on it, and friggin' A. So I got that thing on, and he's got nothing on, and we're just getting hosed. We don't catch nothing. We're not. I mean, you name it. If it could go wrong, it was going wrong in this deal. And so we ended up just quitting. Like, we finally just quit because we were froze. And we go back in, and the guy was with me there. Robert is his name, Robert Stokes. And we all called him Jocko. That was his nickname. He said, God, I ain't never doing this dump. I never, ever. And I had almost the opposite. I was
Really?
like, I got to get better at this because these guys killed us.
Yeah.
Like, we were so outgunned and outclassed. Like, I didn't have anything ready for that.
How much did
experience.
you fish for bass in general? Just specifically for bass?
Well, we would fish for them, but it was sort of like, like we were targeting, and mostly what you would catch would be bass.
Yeah, yeah.
I fished for pike a lot too,
Right,
but bass fishing is what we did a lot, only because it was something that was a lot of time I'd fish from the bank. Like, we'd just go. When I was younger, we didn't have a boat. My dad would take me, and we would go to the little public launch there, and we'd fish from the bank. And in the evening, we'd walk along the beach and throw topwaters out there, because that was the most fun, was catching fish on top.
Yeah.
That's what. So we had a little long Rapala and just jerk it on top, just let it sit there, and eventually wanted to get it. I mean, that's fun, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my first tournament experience was, because I've heard a lot of guys tell about theirs and how great they did and what a wonderful experience, and mine was like really was trying to tell me, just don't come back. And yet here
You're not
I
a
am.
very good listener.
No,
clearly.
no.
How long did it take before you did another one? You were ready to go right away?
Yeah, so I didn't fish any more of the tournaments because I was like, I don't have the right stuff. I don't know what I'm into here.
Yeah.
And because what my technique of fishing was basically one or two lures, and that I just stop and throw. I had no idea.
Wow.
And so that winter, so that was in the spring. That winter came, and I ended up at one of those, because you always go to those little sport fishing shows. They'd have boats and
Seminars. And
stuff like that. And there was a booth there that had they were signing up people for the bass tournament, Oakland County Bass Masters.
Okay.
And so I just signed up for. I was going to be in that. I just signed up for the bass club.
Okay.
Just went as a no boater.
Yeah.
And so that next season when it started,
Okay.
I was fishing those club tournaments as a no boater.
Okay.
So
Got it.
that got me. That got me into the.
All right.
Because I had to. What in the world are you doing with all this stuff?
Yeah.
They had a whole line of tackle boxes. Like, just, I'm thinking, what is in all that? I mean, what is all that?
How old were you at this point again?
Oh, so, I mean, I was at work. This was after high school. So I'm 20,
Okay. All right.
20 years old, and I mean, I was.
Yeah. Still a very young man.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, as far as like when I see them today, like the younger guys that are fishing and stuff, hell, by the time they're 20, a lot of them are already retiring from the sport because they've been around it enough, and they,
they're already, some of them making the Bass Pro Tour even at that age.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, and so I mean, so my experience getting into the fishing of tournaments was pretty late in life compared to what it is now. And then when I finally ended up fishing, just committing to it full time, I was 36.
Really?
Oh, wow.
No kidding.
Was when I started that. So.
And you had moved by that time, correct?
Yeah. So by that time I was in Kentucky.
Got it.
Eastern Kentucky, and there I joined a bass club as well.
Okay.
A local one, because fishing in Michigan there, it was almost all natural lakes.
Yeah.
So when I moved to Kentucky, 1990, left Michigan, so I was 25 and lived in Kentucky. So I had to learn again because I had no idea how to fish a reservoir.
Oh, yeah, right.
I get on, and the things are gigantic,
Right,
which I thought they were gigantic, but, as you look back, 15, 20,000 acre reservoir is a good sized place.
Sure.
It's not. But to me, it was an ocean, just an absolute, how do you break this down?
Yeah.
So much there.
Yeah.
So it seems like I was always putting myself in a position where I was starting over.
Did you have somebody who was sort of like mentors, not maybe the right word, but it's somebody who helped you figure that stuff out?
No, I really didn't. There was, like, as far as like an individual, no. So that's why I would join those clubs.
Yeah.
Because in those, you would get to meet guys, and they were, and they would show you what they do, and because you're with them and you're fishing with them, and so you would learn something from each person, and then some of it, it's kind of at the time more people were technique specific.
Yeah,
they kind of had a way of fishing that they were good at. And so that was a much more of so when you go with this guy, he was always good with this lure, you went with this guy.
Right.
And nowadays it seems like there's the technique specific is really disappearing in the younger group. They're good at a lot of
it's
things.
hard to be that and be successful.
Yeah,
honestly,
it is.
It really is.
It is. And so then it wasn't. I mean, you could be really good at a certain, and you kind of wait your turn. Like, it's getting into my wheelhouse here. You know what I mean? And so so some of the things I'd learned from the guys that didn't really, it was fun, but I always kind of wanted to do, another way of fishing.
Right.
So
what would you say was your first southern technique that you picked up that you thought you were going to be good at?
Night fishing. That is because we never night fished up north.
Yeah.
Catfish, maybe. I mean, you just didn't night fish. And the only thing we caught at night was we'd go smelt dipping at night, and we'd go gig suckers at night. We had a Coleman liner and that thing. We'd walking up the creek and gigging suckers and stuff, but. When we went down south, man, everybody night fished.
Yeah.
And I really got to liking that.
Yeah.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
But I got to liking it too much, and I ended up just quitting the club because it was just so skewed towards night fishing.
Really?
And I wanted to get better at like fishing the Red Man at the time, which is now the BFL.
When did you start doing the BFLs or the Red Man? What year was that?
Right. So early 90s, I'm going to say about 93 or so. So I'd been in the South a few years.
Okay.
And then I wanted to, I was always throwing myself into situations where I felt like I knew I was outgunned, or what I knew I would learn more by doing that. Yeah. And I think that was maybe comes from that very first experience where I just got throttled. But it showed me what I didn't know and what I needed to know.
Proved you could take a punch too.
It's kind of dumb, I guess. But it was. So I kept doing that, and so like even that one little quick deal about that bass club. So I joined the bass club down in Kentucky, and my cousins, my family was all from that area. Mom and dad and all aunts and uncles. They all. But back then, they were born in the South, and they'd move north and work in Detroit, the factories and stuff. And so that's where I ended up being born at for that very reason. But then Dad retired, and we moved back south, and I went too because I didn't want to stay up north. I wanted to go where it was lot more fishing involved.
Year round,
you get fish all
Had
year.
you started to entertain ideas of doing it for a living at that point?
No. I even then it was like making a living fishing was sort of like you had to be a guide. That's how you made a living fishing. You was a guide, and a lot of guides would fish some tournaments, jackpot. But and I wasn't aware much of the whole Bass Masters and Classic and people doing. Because I think even then a lot of the guys weren't really dedicated to just that. Right. They had something else going on.
Yeah, it wasn't many full-time.
Yeah. And so the club I was going to join, my cousin was telling me, you need to join this club. And I said, no, I want to join that one in Corbin, which is the next town over, Tri-County Bass Club. He said, oh, you don't want to fish. They're a bunch of pros. They're going to kill you. This bunch over here don't know anything. Yeah. They're good. They're terrible. We can win some money there. Nice. But I joined the one that I knew I was going to get beat up in, but I went as a non-boater just to learn a lot from the best guys.
Yeah, that's cool.
And then when I quit that club, which was about 93, because I told them I just wasn't going to fish anymore because it was so much night fishing. Yeah. And they're like, well, what are you going to, and I said, I'm going to fish the red man tournaments, the BFLs. And they said, man, you don't want to fish. There's a bunch of pros in that. It is so funny. My one cousin told me that about them, and then these guys told me about them, and then that just progressed. I just kept throwing myself into the, and then 96 was, I think that was the first year, maybe the second year or so of the Golden Blend tournaments.
Okay.
All right. Yeah.
The high dollar ones.
Yeah. So that was, which those turned into the FLW.
Right.
Those got renamed that year, 96, I guess. So this has been 95. So the guy at the Bass Club told me, he said, there's this tournament guy. I know this guy who works for this company, and he's looking for somebody to go with him.
Yeah.
And I said, all right. So the guy who was telling me that was, oh my God. Anyway, it's Charlie Evans' brother. He owned a little muffler shop up there, and he knew this guy who was Bill Taylor.
That's crazy. Oh, wow. That's just
So Bill Taylor and I load up in the Red Man Operation Bass van with the Ranger boat behind it, and we drive to Okeechobee. I just load up the van with it. I didn't know who he was. Yeah. And he didn't know me, but he needed a non-boater to go with him. Sure. So I said, I'm going, and we went to Okeechobee and fished.
That's cool.
And fished that. And so it's so funny, though. I mean, it's how it progressed, and you meet guys, and so, and then that ended up turning into the FLW, and so I started fishing those as a boater. Yeah. And
the first year.
Wow. I was fishing those as a boater. Doing pretty good, and that first year they had that first $100,000 tournament, and Irwin was there, had a suitcase full of cash. The security guy with the chain, handcuffs, took her right up there on stage. But I did not fish that tournament because the entry fee was like, I'm going to say maybe $1,200 or something.
Yeah,
right.
And the other ones were like $400 or $500, and I was high rolling it then, and so I didn't sign up for that one, and I wished I would have, because I would have won Angler of the Year that year, but I didn't fish the last tournament, because that first year they didn't count points, it was pounds, so you were Angler of the Year by how much weight you had caught over the season.
Yeah.
And
your situation going into that tournament was pretty good then.
Yeah, I was doing really good mathematically on the pounds wise.
Oh, gosh.
And Peter T ended up winning it. Yeah. And he told me then, he said if you'd have went, because he only beat me by like 5 or 6 pounds, and we were it was at Bugs Island, Kerr Reservoir in the spring, and he's like, you'd have won that thing, but ended up winning it a few years later.
Nice.
Wow.
So, but that was my first full-time year in '99. So.
From a 14-foot over.
Yeah. I mean, you could see it was little steps, and people asked me, I asked by the, like my daughter was doing high school fishing, and a lot of the other parents are asking me, like, here's my son here, my daughter, like, what do they need to do to get into fishing? Like, how do you get into that? How do you get where? And I'm like, it's kind of a long story, and it's like you find your own path.
That's right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You kind of do. Like, you just want it, and that's your goal. Yeah. That's what you need to focus on. How you get there.
Also, too, you weren't influenced by the same things that people are influenced by today. Like, you didn't have any expectation of needing this piece of equipment or this size boat or whatever. Like, you didn't know until you showed up that you probably should have had a different boat.
Yeah.
Because you didn't have social media to look at. There was
no information. The information you'd get was from the magazine. Like, you'd get 10 a year, and it come in the mailbox. You run out there and grab it. And you just go through that thing. I mean, you'd read it front to back, because it told you what had happened, and it might have been months ago. But that's when you found out.
If you had social media before that first tournament, you probably wouldn't have showed up.
Wouldn't
have shown up.
That's probably right. Yeah. You're probably right about that. So so it's a double-edged sword, isn't it?
It's your lesson of the day.
Yeah.
Just show up.
Yeah.
Just go do it.
Yeah, and also I think it's great you did all the non-boater stuff too. That's something that's kind of overlooked a lot of times.
I think really so.
Learning from people.
Yeah, because it's a good way to get in there and see what it's like without being too committed into it. Right. And you know what I mean? Because like just riding in the boats and just because I think a lot of guys that do the back of the boater maybe are more worried about finding a spot that's really good that they can go back to or something like that. Yeah. But there's so much more you learn.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like in when to move or when to stay or how to drive a boat or the electronics that are useful. You can see,
or even what not to do.
Exactly. You learn. This guy. Let's get out of here. So I mean,
it's very valuable.
You do, but I couldn't do it a lot. Like, I would do that non-boater for a little bit, but then I was always wanting to be like, all right, let's go try this, or you know what I mean? Because I was high strung enough that I was having to kind of sit back and watch, knowing that I was just trying to get my feet wet, and then I'm gonna go. Yeah. I didn't ever feel like I was gonna do that for this long, or that I would just do it for as long as I felt like, all right, I'm ready to try it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That was my mentality.